I was married to Stephanie for 5 years before I discovered her affair with her coworker Andrew. The betrayal was devastating, but nothing compared to what came next. She blindsided me with divorce papers, demanding half of everything, including my family's trust fund. While I was picking up the pieces, she jetted off to the Maldives with Andrew, flaunting their new life on social media. What she didn't know was that her vacation photos would become Exhibit A in court. If you've ever had someone betray your trust, you know exactly how I felt. Drop a comment about where you're watching from, and subscribe to hear how I turned this betrayal into the most satisfying legal victory of my life. My name is Bernard, and I am a 32-year-old software engineer living in Seattle. I come from a fairly well-off family. My father, William, is a retired corporate attorney, and my mother is a retired cardiologist. They moved to Arizona after retirement to enjoy the warm weather and golf courses. As their only child, I was raised with strong values about hard work and integrity. Despite the privilege of having financially secure parents, my family has a substantial trust fund worth several $1,000,000 established by my grandparents for future generations. I met Stephanie at a tech conference 6 years ago. She was 29 and worked in the marketing department of a promising startup. She had this infectious energy and a smile that lit up the room. We connected instantly over our shared love for hiking and travel. After exchanging numbers, we started dating and everything felt right. She was ambitious, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in building a life together. Our relationship progressed naturally. We dated for about a year before I proposed during a hiking trip to Mount Rainier. The view was spectacular, and when she said yes, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We married in a beautiful ceremony at a vineyard outside Seattle. My parents were thrilled, especially my mom, who had always wanted a daughter. Stephanie charmed them completely, showing interest in their lives and calling them regularly, even when I was too busy with work. The first 3 years of our marriage were everything I had hoped for. We bought a lovely house in a nice Seattle neighborhood, traveled to Europe twice, and were starting to discuss having children. Stephanie had transitioned to a better marketing position at a larger company and was excelling. I was proud of her success and supported her career ambitions fully. We had the same friends, enjoyed the same activities, and rarely argued about anything serious. When we did have disagreements, we resolved them through calm discussions. At least that is what I thought. The first signs of trouble appeared after a visit to my parents in Arizona about 2 years ago. It was a typical family visit filled with good food, catching up, and relaxing by the pool. During this trip, my father mentioned some updates he had made to the family trust. Nothing major, just some tax optimization strategies his financial advisor had suggested. Stephanie seemed unusually interested in these details. On the flight back to Seattle, she asked several questions about how the trust worked, who controlled it, and what my eventual share would be. I answered honestly, not thinking much of it at the time. I assumed she was just being financially prudent, planning for our future together. Little did I know she was taking mental notes for entirely different reasons. After that trip, subtle changes began to appear in our relationship. Stephanie started coming home late from work more frequently. She blamed it on new project deadlines and important client meetings. She became more distant emotionally, often absorbed in her phone when we were together. Date nights became rare, and when I suggested weekend getaways to reconnect, she always had excuses for why the timing wasn't right. I tried everything I could think of to bring back the closeness we once shared. I surprised her with gifts, cooked her favorite meals, and even suggested marriage counseling. She dismissed the idea of counseling as unnecessary and attributed her distraction to work stress. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I was still deeply in love with my wife and could not imagine that she might be falling out of love with me. For months, I ignored the signs and focused on being a supportive husband. I picked up more household responsibilities to ease her stress, encouraged her to take time for herself, and never complained when she canceled our plans at the last minute. Looking back, I was naive and in denial. The woman I loved was slipping away, and instead of confronting the issue directly, I was enabling her deception. The first concrete piece of evidence came when Stephanie left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter one morning while she was in the shower. A notification appeared from someone named A with a message that read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place." My heart sank, but I told myself there could be an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a female colleague planning a work dinner. Maybe I was overreacting. But the seed of doubt had been planted. I started noticing more inconsistencies in her stories. She mentioned a client dinner, but the receipt I found in her coat pocket was for a romantic restaurant far from the business district. She claimed to be working late, but when I called her office once, her assistant said she had left hours earlier. She began attending an unusual number of overnight conferences and team-building retreats. Our joint credit card statements showed large purchases at luxury boutiques and high-end restaurants on days she was supposedly working late. There were hotel charges in nearby cities on weekends. She had told me she was visiting her college friend Megan. When I casually mentioned these charges, she became defensive and accused me of monitoring her spending and not trusting her. After several sleepless nights, I made the difficult decision to hire a private investigator. It felt wrong to spy on my own wife, but the alternative was continuing to live with crippling uncertainty. The private investigator, James, was professional and discreet. He explained that unfortunately his services were often needed for exactly this type of situation. 2 weeks later, James called me to his office. With a sympathetic expression, he slid a folder across his desk. "I'm sorry, Bernard," he said, "but you were right to be suspicious." The folder contained dozens of photographs of Stephanie with a tall, dark-haired man I recognized as Andrew Peterson, the marketing director at her company. The photos showed them holding hands in a park, sharing intimate dinners, and kissing outside a hotel in Portland, a city where Stephanie had claimed to be attending a marketing conference. James had also obtained text message records showing their communication going back 7 months. Their exchanges were explicit and intimate, filled with declarations of love and detailed plans for their meetups. They had even taken a weekend business trip to Vancouver together, which explained why Stephanie had been so vague about the details when she returned. The most painful part was reading messages where they discussed their future together. "Once I'm free, we can stop hiding," Stephanie had written. "Just a little longer and we won't have to sneak around anymore." My entire world collapsed. I sat in James's office staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, feeling physically ill. 5 years of marriage, all the plans we had made, the life we had built together, it was all based on lies. James gave me space to process, offering me water and telling me to take my time before deciding what to do next. After gathering myself, I decided to confront Stephanie that evening. I went home early, placed the folder on our dining table, and waited. When she arrived, her smile faded as she saw my expression. "We need to talk," I said, pushing the folder toward her. She opened it, and her face went pale. For a moment she was silent. Then she attempted to deny everything. "These photos are misleading. Andrew is just a colleague. We work closely together." "Stephanie, please don't lie anymore," I said, my voice breaking. "I have seen the text messages. I know about Vancouver. I know about all of it." Her strategy shifted immediately. Suddenly it was my fault. I worked too much. I didn't understand her emotional needs. I wasn't romantic enough. She felt neglected and unappreciated. Andrew made her feel special, valued, and understood in ways I never had. I listened silently, feeling each accusation like a physical blow. When she finished, I asked the only question that mattered to me. "Do you love him?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I'm sorry, Bernard. I didn't mean for this to happen." I asked her to leave that night. She packed some clothes and said she would stay with a friend. 3 days later, she returned with a moving company to collect more of her belongings. We barely spoke during this process. The woman I had shared my life with for 5 years now felt like a stranger. Exactly 1 week after our confrontation, I was served with divorce papers at my office. I had expected this, but what I hadn't expected were her demands. Stephanie was asking for 50% of all our assets, including any future inheritance or trust fund payments I might receive from my family. Her lawyers argued that she had substantially contributed to my career advancement and deserved to benefit from my family's wealth. I called my father immediately, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Dad," I said when he answered, "Stephanie is divorcing me. She was having an affair with her colleague." My voice broke as I continued, "And now she's trying to claim rights to the family trust fund." My father's response was immediate and decisive. "I'm flying to Seattle tomorrow morning. Do not respond to anything. Do not sign anything. Do not talk to her or her lawyers. We'll handle this together." True to his word, my father arrived the next day. William Green, at 65, was still an imposing figure with sharp eyes that had intimidated countless opposing attorneys during his career. He reviewed the divorce papers, made several calls to his former colleagues, and by afternoon we had secured the services of Daniel Harrison, one of Seattle's top divorce attorneys, specializing in high-net-worth cases. Meanwhile, we kept the private investigator on the case. James continued monitoring Stephanie's activities, which now included regular meetings with a lawyer named Thomas Wilson, who specialized in trust fund litigation. This discovery sent alarm bells ringing. Why would Stephanie need a trust fund specialist unless she was specifically targeting my family's money? The most damning evidence came when James managed to legally record a conversation between Stephanie and Andrew in a public coffee shop. In it, Stephanie explicitly discussed her strategy to claim part of my family's trust fund. "Thomas says we have a solid case," she told Andrew. "Bernard's family added me as a beneficiary to their health insurance through the trust 2 years ago. That gives us an opening to argue I was meant to be included in other benefits as well." Andrew laughed and replied, "And once we win Maldives, here we come." James also discovered that Stephanie had secretly copied documents related to the trust fund from our home safe. I remembered giving her the combination years ago, never imagining she would use it against me. Armed with this information, my father and Daniel devised our legal strategy. The trust was well protected by its legal structure, but Stephanie's attempt to claim a portion of it represented a serious threat that needed to be countered aggressively. "The good news," Daniel explained in his office, "is that your family's trust is ironclad. Your grandfather was smart to include explicit provisions about divorce protection. The bad news is that Stephanie seems determined to find loopholes, and her trust specialist might get creative." While the legal wheels were turning, I was falling apart emotionally. The betrayal cut deep, affecting my work performance and mental health. I couldn't sleep, lost weight, and found it difficult to focus on anything. Several coworkers noticed my decline and offered support. To my surprise, a few admitted they had suspected something was wrong with my marriage based on interactions with Stephanie at company events. "She was always a bit too friendly with Andrew," my colleague Michael confided. "We didn't want to say anything, but there were rumors around the office for months." This led me to another painful realization: Stephanie had lied about more than just her affair. Over the following weeks, as I dug deeper into our life together, I discovered inconsistencies in stories about her background. She had claimed to graduate from UCLA with honors, but when I contacted their alumni office out of curiosity, they had no record of her degree. She had talked about growing up in San Diego, but her driver's license listed her birthplace as Tacoma, Washington. The woman I had married was largely a fabrication, a character she had created to appeal to me. It made me question everything about our relationship. Had any of it been real? Had she targeted me from the beginning because of my family's wealth? These questions led me to start therapy with Dr. Russell, who specialized in helping people through divorces involving betrayal. "What you're experiencing is trauma," he explained in our first session. "The person you trusted most violated that trust in the most intimate way possible. It's natural to question everything now, Doctor." Russell's guidance became crucial in the months that followed as the legal battle with Stephanie intensified. He helped me develop coping mechanisms for the anxiety and anger that threatened to overwhelm me daily. Most importantly, he reminded me that Stephanie's actions reflected her character, not my worth as a husband or a person. The preliminary court hearing arrived 3 months after Stephanie filed for divorce. She appeared with her legal team looking confident and composed in an expensive suit I had never seen before. Her attorney presented their case with dramatic flair, portraying Stephanie as the dedicated wife who had sacrificed her own career advancement to support mine, only to be rewarded with neglect. "Mrs. Green is entitled to equitable distribution of all marital assets," her lawyer argued, "including any beneficial interest in the Green family trust that Mr. Green currently enjoys or will enjoy in the future." Her support was instrumental in his professional success, which directly impacts his status as a trust beneficiary. The judge, a stern older woman named Judge Eleanor Winters, listened impassively. When it was our turn, Daniel kept our response brief and non-committal, revealing nothing of the evidence we had gathered. "We contest the characterization of the marriage presented by the plaintiff, Your Honor, and will demonstrate that Mrs. Green's claims regarding the family trust are without merit." Stephanie looked pleased as we left the courtroom, clearly interpreting our restrained response as weakness. I later discovered she had texted several friends, first round to me. "Bernard's lawyer barely put up a fight. This is going to be easier than I thought." Back at Daniel's office, he explained our strategy in detail. We're playing the long game, Bernard. The more confident Stephanie feels, the more likely she is to make mistakes. Meanwhile, we're building a case that will not only protect your trust fund but potentially expose her for attempted fraud. Our three-phase plan was carefully crafted. Phase 1 involved appearing vulnerable and unprepared, lulling Stephanie into a false sense of security. Phase 2 focused on gathering additional evidence of her intent to defraud. James continued his surveillance, documenting meetings between Stephanie Andrew and her lawyers. We also obtained records showing she had consulted with 3 different trust fund specialists before filing for divorce, clearly shopping for the most aggressive legal approach. Phase 3 would be our counterattack, presenting not only evidence of her infidelity but also her premeditated attempt to exploit the legal system to access my family's trust. While this legal chess game unfolded, Stephanie and Andrew grew increasingly bold. With the preliminary hearing behind them, and apparently confident of victory, they booked a luxury vacation to the Maldives. The timing was particularly brazen, coming just 2 weeks before our major court date. They documented their extravagant trip extensively on social media, staying at a resort where villas cost over $2,000 per night. Photos showed them enjoying private dinners on the beach, champagne breakfasts, and excursions on a chartered yacht. Stephanie, who had claimed in court documents that she needed substantial alimony for basic living expenses, was now flaunting a new designer wardrobe and jewelry. In one particularly damning post, Andrew wrote, "Here's to new beginnings and the good life we deserve," Stephanie responded with, "Soon we won't have to worry about money ever again." Blessed number, new chapter. We archived every post, comment, and photo as evidence. Daniel was practically gleeful when I forwarded them to him. "They could not possibly be making our case any easier," he said. "This directly contradicts her financial need claims and demonstrates a pattern of behavior consistent with our fraud allegations." Meanwhile, I worked with my company's HR department to document Andrew's misuse of company resources during his affair with Stephanie. It turned out he had used his corporate credit card to pay for several of their rendezvous and had taken her on a business trip to New York that served no legitimate business purpose. The company was preparing their own case against him for ethics violations. My father coordinated with the trust managers to strengthen the legal protections around the family trust. They added explicit language clarifying that no spouse of any beneficiary could claim rights to the trust even if previously named as a contingent beneficiary for specific benefits like health insurance. My mother, always perceptive, recalled conversations where Stephanie had asked surprisingly detailed questions about the family's assets during holiday gatherings. She wanted to know if we owned multiple properties, whether we had art collections, even if we had offshore accounts, my mother told us. I thought she was just taking an interest in the family, but now it seems like she was cataloging our assets all along. As the court date approached, our legal team compiled a comprehensive countersuit alleging fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and abuse of the legal process. We had evidence showing Stephanie had been planning her exit strategy for nearly a year, consulting with lawyers about the trust fund, while still pretending to be a devoted wife. The night before the court date, I barely slept. Despite our strong case, I was terrified of facing Stephanie and having our private tragedy exposed in court. Dr. Russell had prepared me for the emotional impact, but nothing could fully ready me for what was to come. The courtroom was tense as we all took our places. Stephanie sat with her attorneys looking polished and confident. Andrew sat directly behind her in the gallery, a supportive presence that made my blood boil. My parents sat behind me with my father occasionally squeezing my shoulder in reassurance. Stephanie's legal team went first, repeating their claims about her contributions to my career and her right to a substantial settlement, including access to the family trust. Her lawyer presented her as the victim of a cold, workaholic husband who prioritized money over marriage. They showed carefully selected photos of us together at family events, trying to establish how integrated she was into the Green family. Your Honor, her attorney concluded, Mrs. Green was not just a wife but a partner in building Mr. Green's success. This success directly impacts his position as a trust beneficiary. To exclude her from the fruits of their joint efforts would be profoundly unjust. Throughout their presentation, Daniel remained calm, taking occasional notes, but mostly just listening. When our turn came, he approached the podium with unhurried confidence. Your Honor, he began, this case is indeed about justice, but not the kind Mrs. Green's attorneys have described. This case is about a calculated attempt to defraud not only Mr. Bernard Green but the court itself. Daniel methodically presented our evidence, starting with the proof of Stephanie's infidelity, which established the grounds for our counter-petition. He then moved to the more serious allegations. Mrs. Green did not seek divorce because of an unhappy marriage, Daniel continued. She sought divorce as the culmination of a premeditated plan to access the Green Family Trust Fund. The courtroom fell silent as Daniel displayed the timeline we had constructed, showing how Stephanie's interest in the trust fund intensified after our visit to my parents, followed by her consultations with trust specialists and her affair with Andrew. Judge Winters leaned forward with interest as Daniel played the legally recorded conversation from the coffee shop, where Stephanie explicitly discussed her strategy to claim the trust fund with Andrew. When the recording ended with Andrew's comment about the Maldives, Daniel smoothly transitioned to a slideshow of their recent vacation photos. Interestingly, Your Honor, just 2 weeks before this hearing, while claiming financial hardship in her petition for alimony, Mrs. Green and her paramour did indeed visit the Maldives, staying at the Soneva Johnny Resort at a cost of over $30,000 for their 1-week stay. Stephanie's face had lost all color. Her attorney was furiously writing notes and whispering to her. Andrew, who had been smirking earlier, now looked like he wanted to disappear. Daniel continued by presenting evidence that Stephanie had removed and copied trust documents from our home safe emails between her and her trust specialist, discussing potential loopholes and testimony from my mother about Stephanie's unusual interest in family finances. Finally, Your Honor, Daniel said, I would like to submit evidence that Mrs. Green provided falsified information on her financial disclosure forms. She claimed to have no separate assets, yet we have documentation of a personal account in her name containing over $200,000 presumably saved from joint funds during the marriage in preparation for this divorce. When Daniel finished, Stephanie's attorney requested a brief recess, which the judge granted. I watched as they huddled in intense discussion, with Stephanie gesturing angrily and Andrew looking increasingly uncomfortable. When court resumed, Stephanie's attorney had completely changed tactics, offering to settle for a much more modest arrangement that excluded any claim to the trust fund. Judge Winters denied this request, stating that the evidence presented required a formal ruling. Her decision was comprehensive and decisive. Stephanie's claims were denied in their entirety. The divorce was granted on grounds of adultery and fraudulent behavior. Not only would Stephanie receive no alimony or share of the trust fund, but she was also ordered to pay my legal fees due to the frivolous and potentially fraudulent nature of her claims. Furthermore, Judge Winters referred the matter to the State Bar Association for review of the ethical conduct of Stephanie's attorneys, particularly her trust specialist, who had pursued what the judge called a blatantly meritless claim, with apparent knowledge of its impropriety. As we left the courthouse, reporters asked for statements. Daniel handled them professionally, simply stating that justice had been served, and the Green family was grateful for the court's thorough review of the evidence. The aftermath was swift. Andrew was terminated from his position for ethical violations and misuse of company resources. Several mutual friends contacted me to apologize for believing Stephanie's version of events before the truth came out. Most surprisingly, I received a handwritten letter from Stephanie's parents, with whom I had always had a good relationship. They expressed their shock and disappointment in their daughter's actions, and assured me they had no idea what she had been planning. We raised her better than this, they wrote. We are deeply sorry for the pain she has caused you and your family. Stephanie herself faced additional legal troubles. The evidence of her attempted fraud led to a separate civil suit from the trustees of my family's trust fund. Her career suffered as news of the case spread through professional circles. Last I heard, she was working at a much smaller company in Portland, far from the career trajectory she had once been on. Andrew, who had left his wife and 2 children for the promise of a wealthy future with Stephanie, found himself alone. According to mutual acquaintances, Stephanie ended their relationship shortly after losing the case, blaming him for encouraging her aggressive strategy. He tried to reconcile with his wife, but she had already filed for divorce, armed with all the evidence from our case. The months following the divorce were a period of slow healing for me. I continued therapy with Dr. Russell, working through the anger and trust issues that threatened to define my future relationships. Betrayal trauma, he explained, alters how we see the world. Your task now is to process this pain without letting it harden you. I spent more time with family, reconnecting with my parents and extended relatives who had supported me throughout the ordeal. My father, always stoic, surprised me one evening by discussing his own emotional response to the situation. I blamed myself. At first, he admitted, as we sat on his patio in Arizona, watching the sunset. I thought I should have seen through her. But sometimes people are just very good at hiding who they really are. My career took a positive turn when I accepted a position as a senior engineering manager at a new company with greater responsibilities and better compensation. The fresh start helped me rebuild my professional confidence, which had been damaged during the divorce proceedings. Slowly, I began socializing again. My friend Michael from work introduced me to a hiking group, and the physical exertion and natural beauty helped clear my mind. I reconnected with old college friends I had neglected during my marriage and made new connections through volunteer work at a local coding academy for underprivileged youth. This volunteer work proved particularly therapeutic. Teaching young people and seeing their excitement as they mastered new skills gave me a sense of purpose beyond my own troubles. It also led me to start speaking at support groups for men going through difficult divorces, sharing what I had learned about resilience and recovery. Through this experience, I began to recognize the warning signs I had missed in my relationship with Stephanie. Her excessive interest in my family's finances should have raised red flags. The way she isolated me from certain friends, particularly those who might have seen through her facade, was a classic manipulation tactic. Her reluctance to share details about her own background now seemed obviously suspicious. I learned the importance of maintaining personal boundaries, even in intimate relationships. I discovered that trust should be earned gradually through consistent behavior, not given completely based on initial attraction and compatibility. Perhaps most importantly, I stopped blaming myself for Stephanie's deception. As Dr. Russell repeatedly emphasized, her choices reflect her character, not your worth or judgment. Many intelligent, caring people have been deceived by skilled manipulators. The anger that once consumed me gradually subsided. I did not forgive Stephanie. Her actions had been too calculated, the betrayal too complete, but I no longer allowed those actions to control my emotional state. I focused instead on rebuilding a life defined by authenticity and purpose. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I attended a charity fundraiser for the coding academy where I volunteered. There I met Julia, a clinical psychologist who worked with trauma survivors. Our conversation was easy and genuine, touching on our respective work, without the usual social pretenses. We exchanged numbers and began a friendship based on shared values and interests. Unlike my whirlwind romance with Stephanie, my relationship with Julia developed slowly and organically. We were both cautious, she having ended a long-term relationship 2 years prior. We prioritized honesty, discussing our past experiences openly, and our expectations for any potential relationship. 6 months into knowing Julia, I realized I was beginning to trust again. Not with the blind, absolute trust I had given Stephanie, but with a more mature, discerning trust built on observation and genuine connection. As for the family trust fund that had been at the center of the legal battle, I took a more active role in its management. Working with the trustees, I directed a portion of its proceeds to establish scholarships for students interested in technology education, turning what had been a source of conflict into a force for positive change. Looking back on this chapter of my life, I recognize that sometimes our greatest growth comes from our deepest wounds. The betrayal I experienced forced me to reevaluate everything I thought I knew about relationships, trust, and even myself. It was a painful awakening, but a necessary one. I learned to trust my instincts and the observations of those who truly care for me. I discovered the invaluable support that comes from having a strong family foundation. Most importantly, I found that integrity and truth ultimately prevail, even when the path to justice seems uncertain. Life rarely unfolds as we expect. Relationships end, trust is broken, plans are derailed. But within these disruptions lie opportunities for renewal and authentic growth. My journey continues, shaped but not defined by the betrayal that once threatened to destroy me. If my story resonates with you, remember that pain can be a powerful teacher, but it need not be your final destination. Has anyone else experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to a better path? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story helped you in any way, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that there is life after betrayal. Thank you for listening, And remember, sometimes when one door closes, it is not the end of your journey but the beginning of a more authentic path forward.